Hi, Dennis. My name is Peter Kuo. I want to thank you for coming here today, and I want to thank Stanford CR for putting up this great event. I was elected to be the California Republicans' vice chair just 4 days ago at the convention. Thank you. Now, 4 days on the job, I still have this drive. I want to get up every day and pay back to the country that saved my family's lives.
Man, shout out to my man with the U.S. flag tie. My gracious, now that's different. That's different. Yeah, that's definitely different.
Drive. I want to get up every day and pay back to the country that saved my family's lives 36 years ago. We immigrated from Taiwan here legally. It took me 24 years to become a citizen. My question to you is, what drives you every day to get up and speak the truth? And second question is, how can you help us to turn California red again?
Basically, what drives me is this. When people think of immigrants, they think of Horatio Alger's stories. People coming to America to make it good, earn money, become successful. In my own case, what America has meant to me is somewhat different. It is that America has been the place, and I think the only place, where I've been able to be the architect of my own future, in the driver's seat of my own life. So look at the kind of, if I stayed in India, I would have become an engineer like my dad or a doctor like my uncle. I would have followed in footsteps and I would have my destiny given to me. The beauty for me of America is it's a place where your destiny is constructed by you. And that to me is the promise of America. I don't think I would have gotten it anywhere else. And so when people ask, what are your politics based on? My politics is based on fighting to preserve that American dream, which is uniquely American. I mean, frankly, there is no Chinese dream. There is no, if the French have a dream, I don't think we want to know. How do we turn California around? Just one brief thought. I do think it's a mistake for conservatives to say things like this.
I'm appreciative of him saying that. How can we turn California red again? I'm glad that he said this. He's going to say something about a deeper focus right now. At least that's what I believe he's going to say.
I do think it's a mistake for conservatives to say things like this. Young people are going to be left-wing when they're young, and then when they get older and really cynical like the rest of us and start paying taxes, they're going to become Republicans. There is an actually very healthy idealism in young people, and I would recommend that we tap into that.
Okay, I'm gonna let him finish, but I do want to say this. When I checked out the video of Awaken with JP, and he was talking about why we need to ban guns now, and he was obviously on the side of he's not for gun control. He was on the side of the Second Amendment. He was pretty much saying that if the world continues to go the way it's going right now, the people who are the younger people, and if they continue to grow up thinking that the Second Amendment is not important, they will be the generation that gets duped, or they will have the most potential of getting duped if something was to happen when they are 50, 60, 70 years old. Right now they're young and they're learning, but we already know what side a lot of them stand on, because they're so free and they don't want the rules of old are not the rules of today. They want to be done with them. And sometimes they don't show the level of importance to the Constitution that they should. And some things could possibly happen to them and their families in the lineage that you're setting up right now. And the legacy you're working for right now could be washed out if they don't show a certain level of importance to those things.
Idealism in young people, and I would recommend that we tap into that. We appeal to that. We build on that. Conservatism, ultimately, what are we conserving? We're conserving the idealism of the American founding. So help to implant those principles in young people, and they're going to be just fine in the future.
They'll be just fine in the future. If you teach them and they hear you, Absolutely.
Hi. So, if the Democratic Party supporting slavery in the 19th century means the Democratic Party today is racist, so does that mean that Karl Marx and Engels writing for the New York Tribune, Horace Greeley's Republican newspaper in the 1860s, does that mean the Republican Party is the party of socialism today?
They think that this one is either hilarious or it's going to get DSouza, or they just think it's silly.
We have here an exercise in reasoning that needs to be put into slow motion to be dissected. Okay, so the reasoning is the following. First, you're contending that I contend that because the Democratic Party was the party of slavery before the Civil War, therefore the Democratic Party is racist today. I would submit that I have made no such argument here tonight. For anyone listening fairly, my argument was that the party of slavery prior to the Civil War metamorphosed into the party of racism after the Civil War. And this racism carried well into the 20th century. In fact, when we talk about things like the Klan, it's always amusing to me. People go, well, what about David Duke? This is the precise type of counterexample intended to mislead. Because if you fairly were to say, let me really look at the topic. Let me make a list of all the Ku Klux Klan leaders, every Grand Dragon and Grand Kleagle, going back to the 1870s to now. And let's just put an R or a D after their name. 99% of them would be Democrats. That's a fact. The idea of David Duke is a false.
Is that true? Is what he's no. I know. If he said it is true, nah. I don't give any person that leeway. That's what I'm asking you. Is that true? Because 99% is a huge number. That's gigantic. So at the end of the day, when he says that 99% were on the Democrat side, I need to know if that's absolutely the truth.
Them would be Democrats. That's a fact.
He said that's
the idea of David Duke is a false flag intended to camouflage attention and prevent a legitimate generalization from being made. Now, so the Democratic Party isn't the party of racism because of what happened before slavery. The Democratic Party self-consciously embraced racism after slavery. Lyndon Johnson, this is a very good example because Lyndon Johnson is supposed to be a metaphor for the whole Democratic Party. Yeah, he was kind of a racist in his old Texas country boy days, the narrative goes, but then he became a marvelous, morally enlightened person and championed the Civil Rights Act. I would submit that if you read anything about Lyndon Johnson, you will see that this is a flat-out lie. The fact of the matter is that Lyndon Johnson was routinely using the N-word after the Civil Rights Act. And there is the multiple examples of this from Robert Caro, from Doris Kearns Goodwin, from Lyndon Johnson's own driver. This is corroborated, it's attested, it's indisputable, and yet it is pushed under the rug by progressive historians who need the fake narrative. The fake narrative is the narrative of conversion. There was no conversion. Lyndon Johnson, once a bigot, always a bigot. So now a more interesting question emerges. Why would a bigot promote the Civil Rights Act of 1964? And I would submit that the reason for that is that the bigot realized I can't cash in on white racism anymore. I've got to create a new type of dependent class of people who are now going to have to vote for me, and the very people I've been kicking around. Just listen to Lyndon Johnson's famous Howard University speech, a beautiful example of outright deception. Here's Johnson. He goes, "You can't take a man who has been hobbled for decades and bring him up to the starting line and tell him to run on his own." And now I ask you, what is omitted from this moving sentence? What is omitted from this moving sentence? Who the hell has been hobbling this guy for decades, if not you? If not you?
That's bars right there. That's a mic drop. That's a mic drop right there, because he's saying that the other people have had a head start. How do you expect for them to perform the same way if the others have had a head start? DSouza is saying But you the reason why they had the damn head start. You're a big reason why they're hobbled, bruh.
So if you, Lyndon Johnson, take 1 ounce of moral responsibility and say, I did it, and now I am willing to pay a price to set it right, but the deceitful bigot could not admit that. Even then, he was playing the same game that is played to now, which is let's blame it on somebody else.
Fernandez.
You cannot take a man who has been hobbled. Let's move into the convenient passive voice, as if somebody else did it. I'm here to fix it. I'm Lyndon Johnson. So history involves reading a little between the lines, recognizing that just as we have fake news, we have fake history, we have fake scholarship.
Woo!
You're smart enough.
We have, just like we got fake news, we got fake history, we got fake scholarship. Fake history. That's why that's why I don't just buy into stuff like that. Boom. Yes, DSouza is smart, super smart. Now that's just gonna make me go look things up, confirm or deny things that he proposed, and go from there. Don't ever believe anything at face value, guys. If listen, I'm 44 years old, and I was able to survive for as long as I've survived in the area I grew up in because of that. All right?
Enough here to know this and to be able to do this kind of reading, and it's very liberating. When you do it, it's very liberating. Okay, next question.
That was good. That was good.
I think your response to that last question is definitely helpful in recognizing that some facts may be misleading, such as if I were to come up and give a lecture on Karl Marx and the history of communism in the Republican Party. Obviously, we can cherry pick facts. And so I want to bring up this concern I have with some of your crushing facts, right?
He's saying that most of what DSouza is presenting is fallacy. And it's misleading. And I believe Dr. DSouza is going to touch on that.
And so I want to bring up this concern I have with some of your crushing facts, right? In that when you state just one small fact without contextualizing it, you run the risk of being counter to the generalization, which obviously my friend's fact was, right?
Agree completely.
And so I have a couple of facts that I think can help round out the picture. So one here, in response to the Southern strategy question. This is a quote from Kevin Phillips, Nixon's political strategist.
Yes.
It says, "The more Negroes who register as Democrats in the South, the sooner the Negrophobe whites will quit the Democrats and become Republicans. That is where the votes are. Without prodding from blacks, the whites will backside into their old, comfortable arrangement with local Democrats." Right? So he's making the argument that we need the votes from the Negrophobe whites.
What the hell is a Negrophobe white? That term, I've never heard in my whole 44 years of my life. What about 1619? Huh? What about 1619? We need to discuss 1619.
Not from the urban whites, as you suggested. And that's coming from Nixon's campaign manager. Secondly, data on support for the Civil Rights Act. In the South, 7% of Democrats in Congress supported the Civil Rights Act, and 0% of Republicans did. And in the North, 96% of Democrats and 84% of Republicans supported the Civil Rights Act. That fact, to me, seems like this was not a party issue, but a geography issue, in that very few people in the South supported the Civil Rights Act, and the vast majority of Northerners in both parties did. So then, the fact that right now the South is strongly Republican, and prior to the Civil Rights Act, the South was prominently Democrat, suggests to me that the party representation has switched to match that geographical preference.
He's arguing the switch, and you already know DSouza does not agree with the switch, but hey, he's about to give him the business because of it. Let's see how he does.
Excellent question. And I will try to do justice because you've raised a lot of points. Let's start with Kevin Phillips. You need to pick up Kevin Phillips' book, The Emerging Republican Majority. You described Kevin Phillips as Nixon's campaign manager, which he was not. Second of all, Kevin Phillips says very clearly on the first page, you are going to get from me an analysis of voting patterns in America It is not a description of anything that Nixon did. In fact, Kevin Phillips says, Nixon has not seen any of my work. I'm writing it after the election. So
How does he have perfect recall of that, of what happened on the front page of one of the front pages of his book? And then he tell him that what you said he wasn't. Wow, let's
Phillips
go.
says, Nixon has not seen any of my work. I'm writing it after the election. So Phillips makes it really clear that he is not the architect of anything. He is rather interpreting in his own way. And you have to remember, Kevin Phillips is a guy who's swung from one side to the other of the political pendulum. So you've got a character who's mercurial in his judgments and has said the opposite things at different times. Nevertheless, let's move on to the larger point, which is, according to you, this party division is a geographical and not a partisan divide. And the technique you're using to demonstrate this is you could call it controlling for region. Controlling for region, you're saying, the discrepancy between the parties at least diminishes even if it doesn't go away altogether. The problem with the controlling for region is that you cannot control for something when the party itself is pushing to achieve that regional phenomenon. Let me tell you what I mean. We think today of the South as being the racist side of the country.
Yes, because there's still some parts of the country that are like you can't drive through them when it's dark out if you're a different race. So yes.
C. Van Woodward tells us, the Yale historian, that after the Civil War, in the early 20th century and in the late 19th century, when the segregation debate, he goes, there was massive opposition to segregation in the South. He goes, this emergence of a Southern racist party, he says, was not foreordained. It was not the automatic result of the war. He goes, don't confuse slavery with racism. They're related, but they're not the same thing. Hold on, let me finish. The point I want to make is this. The Democratic Party cultivated the bigotry in the South that became a Southern phenomenon. So you can't now say, well, let's control for Southernness and take it all out and excuse all the Democrats because they're just being good old Southerners. I'm saying no. I'm saying that the Democrats polluted the South with a racist ideology and drove the Republicans out of the South. This was the whole point of the Ku Klux Klan. Racial terrorism was aimed at crushing the black Republican Party in the South. So you can't control for these things. The Democratic Party had its base in the South and it was a racist base. The Republican Party has its base in the North and it was a non-racist base. So
wasn't there one president who was able to win the presidency by agreeing to remove all military from certain southern states so that those states can do whatever they wanted to do, even to black people? And I believe shortly after that, Jim Crow laws was created. Please let me know whatever y'all want me to know with that part right there.
Now we turn to your last point, which is the most tempting of all. Gee, Dinesh, the South used to be Republican. I'm sorry, the South used to be Democratic through most of the 20th century. It's now Republican. Big switch. No. The key question here, I agree, I would add to your switch. Blacks who used to be Republicans are now Democrats. Big switch. The key question when you see these switches is to ask this question: when did the switch occur? So for blacks, let me tell you, the switch occurred in the 1930s. In 1932, 75% of blacks voted for Herbert Hoover. In 1936, 75% of blacks voted for FDR. Blacks switched into the Democratic Party, having nothing to do with the civil rights movement and nothing to do with racism, because the Democratic Party at that time was openly the party of segregation and the Ku Klux Klan. It was the economic benefits of the New Deal. That's a fact. The other fact is that the South moved into the Republican Party under Reagan and in the 90s under Gingrich.
And that is true, because they allowed them to start to get jobs, to start companies, to join in politics, where they started to become more engaged in politics and whatnot, and get seats in politics and all those things.
So what was the Reagan agenda? Now this I know from being up close. The Reagan agenda was patriotism, anti-communism, free markets, family values, pro-life, Christianity. Now, a very appealing agenda to a lot of Southerners. This was a continuation of the strategy of appealing to the non-racist South. So here's the beauty of it. If you want to be empirical, step back and draw two lines. The line of Southern racism, which you'll notice in the 20th century, is going like this, down ever since World War II. And the line of Southern republicanism, which is going like this, in the other direction. So as the South becomes less and less racist, it becomes more and more Republican.
As the South became less and less racist, it became more and more Republican. Is that another mic drop? I think it is. I think that's another mic drop. I think it is. Oh yeah, look guys. Y'all see the tattoo that I got? It's family. Y'all see that? It's healing right now, but it says family. Yeah, got my tattoo. It's for you all, and for my family, for my blood, and for my online family. I'm about to go ahead and start getting to these edits and whatnot. Love y'all, man. Y'all have been remarkable. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. See you next time. Bye.